A waitress was fired for protecting a customer with a shellfish allergy. But her manager didn't know the new employee watching from the corner was actually the CEO in disguise. What happened next left the entire restaurant staff speechless. Now, before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel because tomorrow at the same time, we'll bring you another powerful undercover story that reveals the hidden realities behind the institutions we trust. You won't want to miss it. Maxwell Gray stared at the stack of financial reports spread across his desk, a frown deepening on his face. Just 3 months ago, he'd been heading a successful tech startup, his days filled with coding challenges and investor meetings. Now, he was the reluctant owner of Golden Plate, a regional restaurant chain with 15 locations, all because his uncle Robert couldn't imagine anyone else taking over his life's work. These numbers don't add up, Maxwell muttered, tapping his pen against the report from the lakeside location. Despite steady customer traffic, revenue had dropped nearly 20%. Food costs were inexplicably high, and staff turnover had nearly doubled. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Gray, your management team is assembled in the conference room." The conference room fell silent as Maxwell entered. 5 district managers sat around the polished table, their expressions ranging from curious to cautious. "I've been reviewing our performance, and I'm concerned about Lakeside," Maxwell began. Diana Chen, the Midwest district manager, immediately straightened. "Lakeside has been experiencing some adjustment difficulties." 20% revenue drop isn't an adjustment, Diana. It's a crisis. Patricia's been managing that location for years. There have been some supplier issues and the local economy. "The other 4 restaurants in that area are performing fine," Maxwell interrupted, "and our customer count hasn't dropped." After an uncomfortable silence, Maxwell made his decision. "I need to see it for myself. Starting Monday, I'll be working at Lakeside as a new hire. None of you will acknowledge knowing me. I want to see the restaurant as it really operates, not the polished version you showed the boss." The transformation from Maxwell Gray, CEO, to Mark Wilson, job-seeking server, took considerable effort. Standing before his bathroom mirror Sunday evening, Maxwell barely recognized himself. His neatly trimmed haircut was replaced by longer, slightly messy locks he'd let grow for weeks in preparation. His clean-shaven face now sported stubble. Contact lenses replaced his designer glasses, and his tailored suits were swapped for worn jeans and a simple button-down shirt that he deliberately washed multiple times to look well-used. "Mark Wilson," he practiced aloud, adopting a slightly different cadence than his usual crisp business tone. "Worked at Applebee's during college, took time off to try app development, now returning to restaurant work while figuring out next steps." He studied his reflection critically. Would it be enough? His face had been featured in several business publications since inheriting Golden Plate, but the articles were mostly read by industry insiders, not restaurant staff. The physical transformation seemed convincing, but could he actually perform the job? He'd spent the past week watching training videos and practicing carrying plates around his kitchen. His housekeeper had caught him balancing 3 water glasses on a tray and raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. "I built a tech company from the ground up," Maxwell told his reflection. "I can certainly handle taking food orders." Even as he said it, a flutter of nervousness settled in his stomach. This wasn't about capability. It was about authenticity. If the staff sensed he was an imposter, the whole exercise would be pointless. The Lakeside Golden Plate was situated in a bustling shopping center. The store manager, Patricia, showed little interest during his brief interview. "We need people who can handle pressure. Vince runs a tight ship," she said, barely glancing at his resume. The door opened without a knock, and a man in his 30s strode in. His name tag read Vince Torres, assistant manager, but his bearing suggested he considered himself much more. "This the new guy?" Vince asked, giving Maxwell a dismissive once-over. "Mark Wilson," Patricia confirmed. "Experience at Applebee's." Vince snorted. "Well, you'll have to unlearn whatever chain restaurant nonsense they taught you. We run things differently here." 20 minutes later, dressed in his new uniform, Maxwell stood awkwardly by the service station as the restaurant prepared for lunch service. "You must be Mark." A waitress with curly hair pulled into a practical ponytail approached, offering a genuine smile that reached her tired eyes. "I'm Amber. Looks like you're my shadow today." "Thanks for showing me the ropes," Maxwell said, feeling oddly nervous. Amber's laugh held no judgment. "It's like riding a bike, except the bike is on fire and you're in hell." She winked. "Don't worry. Stick with me and you'll survive. First rule, always look busy, especially when Vince is watching. And trust me, Vince is always watching." The lunch rush hit like a tidal wave. Maxwell had researched restaurant operations, but nothing prepared him for the controlled chaos of a busy service. Amber moved with practiced efficiency, handling 6 tables simultaneously while explaining processes to him in quick, clear bursts. The restaurant's atmosphere struck him immediately. Despite the Golden Plate's upscale casual concept, the lakeside location felt tense. Servers darted between tables with tight smiles that didn't reach their eyes. The kitchen staff barked at each other through the service window. The light fixtures needed dusting, the menus had visible stains, and several booth cushions showed signs of wear that would never have passed his uncle's exacting standards. An elderly couple was seated in Amber's section, the woman using a walker that she carefully positioned beside the table. Maxwell watched as Amber immediately noticed, discreetly moving an extra chair away to create more space without being asked. "Mr. and Mrs. Hoffman, wonderful to see you again." Amber greeted them warmly. "Would you like your usual table by the window instead? It might be more comfortable." "Oh, Amber dear, you remembered," the woman said, clearly touched. "But we're fine here. How's your little boy?" "Growing too fast," Amber laughed. "He lost another tooth yesterday." "Well, tell him Mrs. Hoffman said congratulations," the woman beamed. "Now, is the soup of the day still that delicious potato leek?" Throughout the afternoon, Maxwell watched Amber closely. Despite the tense environment, she provided exceptional service to everyone, remembering regulars' names and preferences, suggesting wine pairings, ensuring special requests were honored. A businessman celebrating a deal received the same attentive service as a mother struggling with a fussy toddler. Customers visibly relaxed in her section, many specifically requesting her tables. Between tables, Amber efficiently trained him. "Always check dishes before serving," she emphasized. "Kitchen's understaffed since they cut hours and mistakes happen." "Cut hours? Why?" Maxwell asked. Amber shrugged. "Cost-saving measures, they say. We're running with 3 cooks instead of 5 during rush. Same with servers. We're covering larger sections than Golden Plate's standard." In the kitchen, Maxwell observed the overworked staff. Marco, the head cook, orchestrated the line with frantic energy, perspiration beading on his forehead as he juggled multiple orders. "Where's Patricia during all this?" Maxwell asked, noticing the manager's absence. "Office work," Amber replied, with a telling look. "She emerges for VIPs or crisis management. Vince handles the floor." And handle it he did, through micromanagement and intimidation. Throughout the shift, Maxwell watched Vince criticize servers for increasingly minor infractions. Water spots on glasses, slightly delayed orders, even the angle of silverware placement. Over the next week, Maxwell settled into the rhythm of restaurant work, strategically requesting shifts alongside Amber, whose sections consistently outperformed others, despite Vince assigning her the least desirable tables. "How long have you worked here?" Maxwell asked during a rare lull, helping Amber roll silverware and napkins. "Almost 3 years," she replied. "Started part-time during nursing school, then life happened." "Nursing school? That's impressive." Amber's smile turned wistful. "On hold for now. Single mom life doesn't leave much time for clinicals. My son Ethan is 7. All energy and questions. Must be challenging, balancing everything. We manage. This job has consistent hours and the tips keep us afloat. When Vince doesn't cut my shifts or give away my tables." Maxwell frowned. "Does that happen often?" "Let's just say certain servers get preferential treatment." Amber nodded toward Melissa, a server who spent more time chatting with Vince than attending to customers. Melissa never closes, always gets the patio section on nice days, and somehow her guest complaints disappear from the system. In the kitchen, Maxwell befriended Marco, who'd been with Golden Plate for over a decade. The chef had deep circles under his eyes, and his whites were stained from a double shift with no break. Quality's not what it used to be, Marco confided during a cigarette break, his shoulders slumped with exhaustion. They switched suppliers 6 months ago. Cheaper meat, frozen instead of fresh, pre-portioned to control costs. I've complained, but... He shrugged helplessly. They won't listen? Maxwell prompted. Marco took a long drag of his cigarette. They don't care. Your uncle, the founder, he'd visit every kitchen, taste everything personally. He knew every chef by name. Marco's eyes softened at the memory. Once, I overcooked a steak during his visit. Instead of getting angry, he showed me his trick for getting the perfect temperature. Said he'd made the same mistake when he was learning. Sounds like a good man, Maxwell said, feeling a pang of guilt. He'd barely known his uncle beyond obligatory holiday gatherings. The best, Marco agreed. He built this place on quality. Now? He gestured toward the kitchen. Look at this. Equipment breaking down, corners being cut. Last week, the walk-in refrigerator hit 52 degrees. I reported it, but Vince said it was within acceptable parameters and to keep using it. That's not safe, man. Not for the food, not for the customers. Most concerning were the conversations Maxwell overheard between staff members. Did you see Lisa got fired yesterday? A dishwasher whispered. For what? Asked a busboy. Supposedly attitude problems, but really she questioned Vince about the modified expiration dates. When Maxwell related this conversation to Amber, her expression grew serious. There's a lot happening that shouldn't be, she admitted. Food getting relabeled with later dates, cheaper ingredients substituted without menu changes, cleaners diluted beyond effective concentration. That sounds dangerous, Maxwell said, genuinely alarmed. It is. I've documented everything and sent reports up the chain twice. Amber's voice turned bitter. Got written up both times for unauthorized communication with corporate and creating a hostile work environment. The reports never made it to headquarters? Apparently not. Or they were dismissed. She straightened as Vince emerged from the office. Just be careful, Mark. People who ask too many questions don't last long here. Friday night hit the restaurant like a perfect storm. 2 servers had called out, leaving the floor dangerously understaffed for their busiest service of the week. The reservation system showed the restaurant booked to capacity, with several large parties celebrating special occasions. Everyone's taking double sections, Vince announced during pre-shift. No excuses, no mistakes. By 7 o'clock, the restaurant had descended into barely controlled chaos. The understaffed kitchen fell behind on orders, with ticket times stretching to 45 minutes. At the host stand, a line of increasingly frustrated customers with reservations waited for tables that hadn't been bussed. Amber, table 23, has been waiting 10 minutes for their check, Vince barked, materializing beside the service station. I know, I'm printing it now, she replied, her fingers flying over the touchscreen. I've got 4 other tables with entrees up. Figure it out, Vince interrupted. And VIPs just got seated in your section, table 35, the Daniels party. Mr. Daniels is friends with the district manager, so don't screw it up. Amber composed herself, then approached a well-dressed couple being seated at a corner table. As she took their drink orders, Maxwell overheard a crucial detail. And I have a severe shellfish allergy, the man was saying. Even cross-contamination can trigger a reaction. I'll alert the kitchen immediately, Amber assured him. I'll personally oversee the preparation of your meal to ensure there's no contact with shellfish products. When she returned to the service station, Amber hurried to the kitchen for an intense discussion with Marco about preparation procedures. Meanwhile, Vince stalked the floor, his impatience growing as food backed up and customers became restless. When Amber returned from the kitchen, Vince intercepted her. What's taking so long with the Daniels order? They're still waiting on drinks. Mr. Daniels has a severe shellfish allergy. I'm coordinating with the kitchen to ensure. We don't have time for special treatment, Vince cut her off. Get their order in now. I need to verify the preparation area is shellfish-free first, Amber insisted. The fryer oil might be contaminated from the calamari. Now, Amber. Vince's tone left no room for argument. When the Daniels entrees finally came up, Amber checked them carefully. Wait, she said, examining Daniel's steak. This has the seafood compound butter on it. The ticket specifically says no shellfish allergen alert. Marco cursed. The ticket got smudged. Let me remake it. How long? Amber asked. 8 minutes for a new steak, minimum. Amber glanced at the dining room, where Vince was watching her, and at the Daniels table, where the couple was clearly growing impatient. I'll explain the delay, she decided. Better they wait than have a medical emergency. When Amber returned to check on the remake, Vince cornered her by the kitchen entrance. What did you tell them? He demanded. The truth. That their steak was prepared with shellfish butter, despite the allergy warning. And we're remaking it safely. Vince's face flushed. You're making us look incompetent. I'm preventing a potentially fatal allergic reaction, Amber replied, her voice low but firm, as Maxwell drove home that night. The weight of what he'd discovered settled heavily on his shoulders. The lakeside location wasn't just suffering from management problems. It was being deliberately mismanaged, with standards compromised and dedicated employees like Amber bearing the brunt of the dysfunction. Saturday morning brought an unexpected development. Maxwell arrived for his lunch shift to find the staff huddled near the break room, whispering intently. Hannah, the nervous hostess, rushed over when she spotted him. Mark, did you hear? The Daniels from last night. Turns out he's not just friends with the district manager. His brother-in-law is some executive at corporate. Maxwell feigned surprise. In reality, he knew exactly who Bernard Daniels was, the corporate counsel who had handled his uncle's estate transfer. They came back this morning with a thank you note and gift basket for Amber, Hannah explained. Said she prevented what could have been a serious medical emergency. Before Maxwell could respond, the front door opened. Bernard Daniels himself entered, carrying an elegant gift basket. Behind him, his wife carried what appeared to be a formal letter. Vince intercepted them before they reached the host stand. Mr. and Mrs. Daniels, what a pleasant surprise. We'd like to speak with your manager and with Amber, Mr. Daniels said firmly. Patricia is handling inventory, but I'd be happy to assist you. Amber will be in later this afternoon. Mrs. Daniels held out the letter. Perhaps you could ensure she receives this. It's a commendation letter for her personnel file. We've also sent a copy to your corporate office. After the Daniels departed, Vince disappeared into the office, taking the letter and gift basket with him. When Amber arrived at 3 for her scheduled turnover, Vince immediately summoned her to the office. Maxwell positioned himself near the hallway, where the partially opened door allowed snippets of conversation to drift out. Completely undermined kitchen protocol, Vince was saying. I followed allergen procedure exactly as outlined in our handbook, Amber responded, her voice calm but firm. By telling customers about kitchen mistakes, making us look incompetent, by preventing a potentially fatal allergic reaction. The conversation grew more heated. Patricia's voice suddenly entered the discussion. Amber, these accusations are extremely serious and completely unfounded. I reported them through proper channels twice, Amber insisted. Nothing changed. Because there was nothing to change, Patricia responded coldly. What's clear is that you've developed an attitude problem that's disrupting this restaurant. A pause followed. Are you firing me? Amber asked, her voice suddenly quiet. Effective immediately, Patricia confirmed. Vince has already processed your final check. This is retaliation, Amber said, voice shaking slightly. Because I refuse to serve a shellfish allergen to a customer. Because I've documented health code violations. The office door opened fully. Amber emerged, face pale but composed. The dining room had fallen silent, every employee and several customers watching the unfolding scene. Amber walked to her station, collected her server book and personal pens, then faced her managers. You're making a mistake. Your final check will be mailed, Patricia said dismissively. Please leave the premises immediately. Maxwell watched helplessly as Amber walked toward the door with dignity, despite the public humiliation. Before exiting, she paused, looking back at the staff who had frozen in place. Good luck, everyone, she said softly. Then she was gone. Maxwell spent Sunday gathering evidence. He located Amber through social media and visited her modest apartment. "Mark, what are you doing here?" she asked when she opened the door. "Oh, I need to talk to you about what happened yesterday." Amber invited him in, sending her young son to play in his room. "I'm not here for Vince," Maxwell clarified. "I'm here because what happened to you was wrong." Amber studied him, suspicion giving way to cautious curiosity. "Why do you care so much? You've worked there for what, 2 weeks?" Maxwell took a deep breath. "Because I'm not actually Mark Wilson, server trainee. My name is Maxwell Gray. I own Golden Plate." The color drained from Amber's face. "You're Robert Gray's nephew? The new CEO?" Maxwell nodded. "I inherited the company 3 months ago. Financial discrepancies at Lakeside prompted my investigation. I went undercover to see the operations firsthand." After a long moment, Amber asked, "What exactly do you want from me?" "The truth," Maxwell said simply, "and any documentation you have." Amber retrieved a thick folder and a flash drive. "I've been collecting evidence for months. At first I thought it was just corner cutting to save money. Then I realized it was systematic." For the next hour, Amber walked Maxwell through her findings. Photos of expired products with altered labels, text messages from former employees describing similar concerns, schedules showing patterns of retaliation against staff who questioned practices, food cost reports with suspicious modifications. When Diana began pushing Patricia to improve profitability, Patricia essentially handed control to Vince while she focused on paperwork, Amber explained. "And there's something else. I think the financial reporting is being manipulated. Cash handling procedures aren't being followed. The safe counts often happen behind closed doors when Patricia and Vince are alone. And receipts go missing from the system regularly, especially from large parties." Maxwell reviewed security footage from Lakeside remotely, footage that corporate could access, and confirmed Amber's allegations. "It's worse than I thought," Maxwell told her when they met again that evening. "I've identified at least $7,000 in missing cash deposits over the past month alone. And the footage shows Vince deliberately mislabeling expired products after hours." "What are you going to do?" Amber asked. Maxwell's expression hardened. "End it. Tomorrow." Monday morning, Maxwell arrived at corporate headquarters dressed in his usual tailored suit, looking every inch the CEO. He'd arranged an emergency meeting with Diana, telling her only that he needed to discuss urgent concerns about Lakeside operations, and instructing her to bring Patricia. "Thank you for coming on such short notice," Maxwell began, his tone businesslike. "Of course," Diana replied smoothly, "though I'm not clear on the urgency. My reports show Lakeside is finally stabilizing after—" "Your reports are fabricated," Maxwell interrupted, his voice like steel. Maxwell activated the conference room screen, displaying financial documents showing over $30,000 in unaccounted cash transactions in the past quarter alone. "There must be a reconciliation error," Diana suggested. "There's no error," Maxwell cut in. "Only deliberate manipulation." He turned to Patricia. "Would you like to explain why security footage shows you and Vince removing cash from the safe after hours? Or should we discuss the health code violations first?" Patricia's composure cracked. I never Vince handles most of the daily operations. I just sign off on the reports Diana requires." "Which you know are false," Maxwell stated. Diana tried again. "Maxwell, I understand you're concerned, but surely there's a reasonable explanation." "Like why you buried multiple employee reports about food safety violations," Maxwell pressed, "or why you've allowed a pattern of retaliatory firings against whistleblowers." The conference room door opened. Maxwell's assistant ushered in legal counsel and an external auditor. "They'll be handling the formal investigation into the Lakeside situation, effective immediately." Diana straightened. "You're overreacting to disgruntled employee complaints. If you'd consulted me first—" "I did better than consult you," Maxwell interrupted. "I worked at Lakeside for the past 2 weeks as a server trainee named Mark Wilson." The revelation landed like a thunderbolt. Patricia gasped audibly. Diana's professional composure shattered completely. You... what? I saw everything firsthand, Maxwell continued mercilessly. The understaffing, the food safety violations, the preferential treatment, the retribution against staff who raised concerns. Most disturbing of all, I witnessed Amber Preston's unjust termination after she protected a customer with food allergies. Within 30 minutes, Maxwell arrived at Lakeside, flanked by legal counsel and the auditor. The restaurant was preparing for lunch service, staff moving with the tense efficiency he'd observed throughout his time undercover. Vince emerged from the back, approaching with a customer service smile that faltered when he noted Maxwell's authoritative stance and professional companions. "Can I help you?" Vince asked cautiously. "Vincent Torres, I'm Maxwell Gray, CEO of Golden Plate Restaurants." Vince's eyes widened slightly, but he recovered quickly, extending his hand. "An honor to meet you, sir. Had we known you were coming..." Maxwell ignored the outstretched hand. "I believe we've already met. I've been working here for the past 2 weeks as Mark Wilson." The color drained from Vince's face so rapidly that for a moment Maxwell thought he might faint. "That's not... you can't..." "I've seen everything, Vince," Maxwell stated coldly. The altered expiration dates, the safety violations, the kickbacks from suppliers for using inferior products, the cash skimming, and most recently, the unjustified termination of Amber Preston. By now, staff had begun to gather, watching the confrontation with expressions ranging from confusion to dawning comprehension. "Everyone, may I have your attention, please?" Maxwell called. "My name is Maxwell Gray. I own Golden Plate Restaurants. For the past 2 weeks, I've been working alongside you as Mark Wilson, learning firsthand about the conditions at this location." Murmurs rippled through the group as several employees recognized Mark beneath the CEO's polished exterior. "What I've witnessed here is unacceptable," Maxwell continued. "Today, that ends." He turned back to Vince. "Vincent Torres, you're terminated, effective immediately. Please surrender your keys and company property." As Vince was escorted away, Maxwell addressed the staff again. "Patricia Winters and Diana Chen have also been suspended pending investigation. This location will temporarily close today for a complete audit and food safety inspection. All scheduled staff will receive full pay during this process." Maxwell raised his hand for silence when anxious whispers spread through the group. "This is not your fault. You've been working in an impossible situation under management that failed you at every level. That includes me. I should have been more involved, should have recognized the problems sooner. For that, I apologize. When we reopen, and we will reopen, it will be with proper staffing, proper training, and leadership that values both our customers and our employees." Maxwell paused, then added, "starting with the return of someone who exemplified those values and was punished for it." The front door opened and Amber walked in. The staff's reaction was immediate. Smiles, whispered exclamations, even a spontaneous burst of applause from the kitchen staff led by Marco. Maxwell joined her at the entrance. "Ms. Preston has agreed to return as our interim manager while we rebuild this location. She has demonstrated the integrity and commitment to quality that Golden Plate was founded upon." Amber stepped forward, her expression a mix of determination and cautious optimism. "If you're willing to stay with us through this transition, I promise things will be different. Better. The way they should have been all along." For a moment, the restaurant was silent. Then Hannah, the nervous hostess, stepped forward. "I'd like to stay," she said quietly. Others followed, nodding their agreement, some with visible emotion. Maxwell felt something tighten in his chest. Pride, relief, and a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about fixing a troubled restaurant. It was about honoring his uncle's legacy and the people who made it possible. "Thank you all," he said sincerely. "We have a lot of work ahead, but together we'll make Golden Plate something we can all be proud of again." What would you do if you discovered unfair practices at your workplace? Would you speak up like Amber, even at personal risk, or stay silent to protect your position? The courage to stand for what's right, even when it's difficult, is a quality we all admire, but can find challenging to embody in real life. And for those in leadership positions, how well do you truly understand what happens on the front lines of your organization? Could going undercover in your own business reveal blind spots that reports and meetings never uncover? If you enjoyed this true tale of workplace justice, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible undercover boss stories that will restore your faith in good leadership. Don't forget to tap that notification bell so you never miss our weekly uploads. Share your own workplace experiences in the comments below. We read every single one and love hearing your perspectives. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the most valuable insights come from seeing your world from a completely different angle. Until next time, this is Undercover Stories, bringing you the revelations that change workplaces forever.